Have you ever wondered what it really takes to make Agile work? Well, at the Global Agile Summit, we're bringing you real-life, first-person stories of Agile succeeding out there in the real world that will inspire you to take action. Whether you're a leader, a product innovator, a developer, you'll hear practical insights from those who've done it. They'll be telling their own stories from the stage. I'll tell you more about this at the end of this episode, so stay back and listen to the full detailed description of what we have in store for you at the Global Agile Summit. But if you can't wait, you can go right now to globalagilesummit.com and check out our full schedule. For now, on to the episode, but I'll see you at the end of this episode with more details on the Global Agile Summit. Talk to you soon. Hello, everybody. Welcome to one more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. And this week, joining us from the beautiful city of Vienna in Austria is Richard Brenner. Hey, Richard. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Vasco. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Richard is a versatile technology leader with experience as a software engineer, product owner, and agile coach. Passionate about building software that excites, he thrives at the intersection of technology, change, and leadership. Lately, he's been focusing on collaborative modeling, bridging disciplines to drive innovation and create meaningful impact. So, Richard, that was a short intro. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and how did you end up becoming a Scrum Master?
Yeah, thanks for that. So, actually, to be honest, I never worked as Scrum Master. I'm now... My job title now says Enterprise Agile Coach. I started being a software engineer. I studied software engineering and came to Agile methodologies when I started working for a product company called Porsche Informatics, like the car dealer, Porsche Holding in Salzburg. So we were working as Scrum teams there, and I was a developer in one of those Scrum teams. That was my first touch point with Scrum. And later, when this project got bigger and bigger, they were looking for new product owners. And that was my shift from being a pure developer, which always had in focus becoming a software architect sometimes, shifting to the product owner role. And because I thought, and I think this is a pattern in all of what I'm doing, I could have more impact on the product from that position. So more impact on what are we creating, what are we building, how do we delight our clients there. And I think from my shift to another company where I developed then software for other clients, I also worked in Agile teams, and from there, that was my first request from another client who said, "Look, guys, we have some Agile teams that work for us. How do we scale this in our organization?" And that was my first assignment, where I was partnering and more experienced Agile coach back then to consult this client. And I would say from there on, I shifted more and more into a pure Agile coaching role, and the development part faded away.
So if I understand, your story is related to this idea of how can we help develop software better? Then you first started with that product owner, like, shifting to what needs to be built, why is that important? And then later on in a consulting role, you understood that actually being a product owner helps, but there's so many other things, and being an Agile coach is probably a better position to be in order to help develop better software. Did I get it right?
Exactly, yes, exactly. And I always reflected a bit on my motivation because I shifted between management roles and Agile coaching and also software development. And I think it was always that, what you said. My passion was to create software products ultimately that matter and be part of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And one of the things that really interests me is, of course, this kind of shifts in career, right? I'm just now writing about that for the blog and for the newsletter, where we talk about what are the things we need to focus on. And I focus exactly on what you said, right? Like thinking about what do I want to bring to my community at work. And in your case, it was this developing better products. But of course, this isn't easy, even when we are clear about what our purpose is. Sometimes we do get in trouble, and today's Fail Monday here on the podcast, so we explore that. So Richard, share a story of a difficult moment you had, in this case, as an Agile coach, and walk us through the story first. We'll dive into the takeaways and the lessons learned later, but share that story first.
That is, of course, also a very personal question, and for me, when I reflect, I mean, I'm now, I think, more than 10 years in the business already, but I think when I started doing this coaching assignments, where I have been an external Agile coach for a company introducing Agile methods, I think the one story came into my mind, and I think it has a lot to do with leadership and how I also live this role as a leadership role, because I think all the failures came out from a personal stance of being complacent or not being in an active leadership role. And let me be more precise now. I think I started
Tell us the story
at that client.
there, Richard.
Yeah, I started at this client. Very enthusiastic about Agile and all the methods and Scrum, and the client said, "Look, we have some teams there. We want to introduce Kanban there, and to start the way of working and to start a mindset shift." So back then, I also asked already, what is the bigger goal behind that? Like what are you trying to achieve with that? But they said it's not. It's to get started. Let's start doing that and start a different thinking process. And I think ultimately this was already the failure.
Okay,
because
tell us a little bit more about that. Okay, so you started with that idea. You tried to introduce it to someone, right? I imagine you had a couple of conversations. How did those conversations go?
Yeah, because I was part of a coaching team, and this coaching team introduced Kanban in a department. And we decided, okay, who takes which team, and then we started with a Kanban training and board creation workshop, like the typical Kanban intro. What I learned the hard way there is change management, I would say, and how to involve people in the change, because those people were not part of the change process. They just got the Kanban process now from top down, and they needed to start with Kanban. And of course, some were more open to it, and some were really against using it, or they just did it because management said so. And this was a bad place to be in my position.
How
because
did that show up? Like, so I understand when you're looking at that story and you're reflecting on it. Okay, so this was the wrong approach to take. But how did that show up in practice? For example, how did the teams react when you had that introduction workshop? What were some of the comments or feedback that you were getting?
Sure. So first of all, questions like, why do we need to work differently? So what are we doing wrong now so that we need to do something different? that was a good,
great
valid
question, by the way.
Yeah, and it's a very valid question. I would probably also ask it when I'm in that position now. And I couldn't answer it from a business company perspective. That was the first problem. I could just answer from a method perspective, very general, and say, look, listen, this could help us to focus and limit our working process. But I couldn't say, look, the company is trying to achieve this and that and this. So this was the problem, that I just could use the pure Kanban methodology and argue for myself, which is not, I think, the right approach.
So basically what you're saying is you were brought in by someone who already knew what the solution was, but you were not told what the problem was for which the solution was being hired. Is that so? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And this for me kind of highlights one of the maybe even crucial responsibilities we have in our profession as agile coaches or scrum masters, which is not to try to solve problems we don't understand, i.e. in practice, meaning, don't apply Scrum. First understand the problem, then apply Scrum, or don't apply Kanban. First understand the problem, then apply Kanban, right?
Exactly. And I think this has taught me a lot how I approach projects nowadays and how I also approach clients nowadays. So because there were many patterns in that situation. For example, the first problem is that we didn't define the why, the reason why we do what do we want to achieve, and also the problem was that the people have not been involved in this whole change very late when we already had the solution for something. And the third problem was also that this was not the top management level we started. So the top management level was not really involved in that change. So they accepted it, but they didn't understand what does it mean and how can they support the change, what is needed from them. And I think I had a lot of learnings from that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great reflection, right? Like when we're brought in to a team or to a department or to talk to a leader, our first job should be to understand what they want to achieve, right? Like, because when I think about your story, I'm thinking that I could have had the first workshop not about the Kanban method, but about what they want to change. What are the things that they think are not working and why aren't they working? Because the teams might have had a completely different perspective from the leaders who had hired you to bring in Kanban, right?
Exactly. And so I think what I learned is that Kotter's Leading Change book is really good and also applies in practice for what I learned, so that you need to communicate. You cannot under communicate the reason why you are changing and what is it, what you try to achieve. And also I think there's still nowadays not enough emphasis on spending enough time on the contracting between the organization that hires you and you as an agile coach, and also the contracting between each team that you come into. For example, when I join an organization, I try to clarify the overarching goals and how can we then work with the teams. How can we make sure that we derive from that overarching goals that make sense for them, and then come up with a solution that works for them? Of course, often in a
and that
certain
contracting
boundary.
is very important aspect of us coming into a team or an organization. Do you have some tips on how to start that conversation?
I mean, yes. I mean, we as a company, we have now like a coaching approach where we say the first phase is really, we call it an exploration phase. And we say and we even talk with the clients. We hire you as agile coach. We want to achieve something, and we say, okay, please, but let's please have a first phase where we have conversations with multiple people in the organization to get this like a good picture about the status quo of your company, and also let us please have a conversation with sponsors, top management, what they see, so that we really understand who is trying to change what and why. and then we usually have conversations. We take part in ceremonies like retrospectives of teams, of daily stand-ups, usually a very good place to be and learn how the conversations are going. You get a sense of the culture. How do people talk to each other? Are cameras on or not? Is there cynicism going on or not? How open are we talking about failure here? And we get a big picture of the organization. What we come up with usually is that we say, okay, what do we see on team level? What do we see when we have we call it the inter-team level, so when multiple teams work together? Do we see there any issues? And what do we see on organizational level, like the organizational conditions? Sometimes we have agile Scrum teams, but we have a waterfall business still in a project world where we say, okay, we have a fixed plan for 1 year ahead, resource plan, and a fixed scope deadline in a year.
Find those contrasts, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
And then we try to focus. So let's say, what is the first focus? What should we do in the first, let's say, 3 months? What could be a meaningful first
and
step
that's
here?
the conversation for the contracting, because once we know that focus, we can bring it up and have the feedback, right?
Mm-hmm. And you also get like good conversations and see how far is the change really going now. Because when we say, listen, you have still your project steering committees, and you have your fixed budgeting. That would be a huge lever if we do something there and talk to people there. And then you sometimes hear, no, not now. We need to make sure we did our homework with the agile teams. And if we are good there, then we can have this conversation.
Yeah, and it's really important to know like the how these things build up. So, but thank you for sharing all of that, Richard. If you have a link to that guide that you just referred to, and if that's public, just send it to me. We'll put it in the show notes for people to look at. Thank you for sharing your story, Richard.
Welcome. Thank you.
Hey, friend. Thank you for staying. Here is all you need to know about the Global Agile Summit. If you've ever suffered or know people who are suffering from Agile fatigue, this event is for you. Agile fatigue is that feeling that settles in when we can't really see a light at the end of the tunnel. We get discouraged, especially when conversations revolve around the same old frameworks, the same old buzzwords and theories. We don't feel that energy anymore. Well, the Global Agile Summit is a different kind of event. We're bringing you real-life first-person stories of Agile succeeding out there in the real world that will inspire you to take action and transform the way you work. The Global Agile Summit will happen in Tallinn, Estonia, May 18th, that's the workshop day, and then 19th and 20th, the conference day. And Tallinn, Estonia is one of the most innovative tech hubs in Europe. The Global Agile Summit is hosted together with Latitude 59, which is kind of a citywide celebration of software startups and groundbreaking ideas. And we'll have a shared ticket for you to attend those events as well. So who will be speaking? Well, we've got an incredible lineup of thought leaders in software and Agile. For example, Clinton Keith, the person who literally wrote the book on game development with Scrum, and is busy bringing Agile to the world of game development. You must check his session. The very famous and well-known Jürgen Apelo, author of Management 3.0, will be talking and exploring about AI's impact on leadership. We also have Gojko Adzic, who's taking an unconventional look at the product growth with his lizard optimization keynote. Other speakers include, for example, Sven Dietz, who's challenging everything we know about software development by literally ditching contracts and estimates. Can you imagine? His teams deliver software before their competitors are even done with the contract negotiation. How agile is that? But there's more. We'll cover engineering practices in our developer track with talks on, for example, AI-assisted test-driven development, developing products in minutes with a different approach to how we develop, configure, deploy platforms, and much more. We also have a product track where we cover cutting-edge ideas around product discovery, delighting customers with product delight frameworks. We'll have a talk about that. And we also have an Agile business track where we will talk about, for example, open strategy, a very agile approach to managing organizations and delivering software faster to clients, faster than you can even write a contract. Literally, I mean, I already told you about Sven Ditz's story. It's amazing. It definitely is a must-see. I'm sure you'll be inspired and get a lot of ideas for your own software projects and software delivery. Now, whether you're a business leader, a product innovator, or a developer, you'll definitely find value in our 3 focused tracks. That's Agile Business for those working with businesses and organizations, Agile Product for product managers, product owners, and innovators, and Agile Developer for the builders making Agile work in practice, the coders, the testers, the designers, the producers, the Scrum Masters, you name it. If you join, you will meet over 200 Agile professionals from all over the world. People who, just like you, want to grow, want to share, and want to learn by challenging the ideas that don't work anymore. At the Global Agile Summit, you'll get new connections, fresh ideas, and the energy to take your own Agile to the next level. And who knows, maybe even find your next career opportunity. So don't miss out. Check out the full program and grab your ticket now at globalagilesummit.com. I'm really looking forward to seeing you all in Tallinn, Estonia in May. I'll see you there.